So this is the story about how I won 1.6 million euro to pursue a project around gender-inclusive innovation. Now, a few years ago, I entered a new area of research and innovation focused on gender and gender-related issues in the tech industry. And it was a great opportunity because there was space in this field that I could act. Now, this whole thing kind of got started many years ago when I first started teaching. I actually first started supervising bachelor's thesis projects. And I was supervising two groups who were pursuing their bachelor's thesis, and both groups were composed entirely of women. So I had a real interesting opportunity as a new academic to kind of learn from those students as much as they were learning from my guidance and my supervision. And I remember very distinctly one day sitting in my office with one of my students and them kind of probing me a little bit and challenging me to really take more seriously the issue of gender in my research. Now, up until that time, most of my research had focused on this issue of universal design and technology, and had specifically focused in on disability rights issues. And so it was the first time that I actually had a chance to kind of take a step back and think about the gendered aspects of technology design. And so it was a really interesting chance to kind of think more critically about my work and be more reflective about my work. Now, fast forward a little bit, I'm teaching my first class at the university, and I'm sitting in front of this huge body of hundreds of students. And I realized that my role as an educator has to extend beyond just the baseline curriculum of what I'm given in terms of the course that I'm teaching. And I need to think about my role a little bit more critically and try to find ways in which I can create impact through my teaching. So it was that semester that I tried to take on board one of my students' comments and not just try to integrate gender into my research, but actually take a gendered approach to my teaching and think more critically about the opportunities, about the barriers that the women in my class might be experiencing getting access to a computer science education. And so I kind of called out and called in those women and the men in the room to find ways in which to bring together the women so that there are equal opportunities for them to have access to their education, to learn programming, to learn how to develop new technologies. Now, at that time, I was just a lowly assistant professor, so I hadn't even finished my doctorate, so I wasn't really in a position where I could kind of make myself known and kind of flex my power and authority as an academic, because I was at the lowest possible rung of my academic career. And I remember at the time I was being interviewed for different kinds of academic positions and kind of going contract to contract. And in one of these interviews, I made the decision to kind of put my money where my mouth was and not just talk a big talk about gender and about gender inclusive issues, but really try to make this a centerpiece of my work. And so at that interview, I did my trial lecture specifically on issues of gender inclusion in the tech industry. And I remember very distinctly playing a song during that trial lecture. And this is a song, it's a parody of an old song called All About That Bass. And it's kind of a pop tune. And it was a parody written by the Columbia University Business Student Organization, something along those lines. And the parody, it wasn't about music or song or anything like that. It was about feminism and inclusion, and a lot of the lyrics are a little bit edgy. And so I think it's really, it was really a moment in my career, in my life, where I kind of stopped sitting back and observing and kind of stopped being a passive kind of scientist and started acting more deliberate in terms of the impact that I I wanted to make. And putting it kind of out there, putting it on the line, where if my trial lecture wasn't accepted, then I wouldn't have gotten that contract. I wouldn't have been able to progress in my career. And so it meant a lot to me to kind of say to the members of the committee who are evaluating me that if you hire me, you're not just going to get someone who sits back and kind of observes society. You're going to get someone who is actively engaged in trying to create change and trying to create impact. Now, this was all well and good. I ended up getting the contract, so I was able to continue to progress in my career, but it was really just kind of a drop in the bucket. I mean, my voice, even just me putting it on the line like that wasn't really enough to create change. But I ended up getting a really critical opportunity from the United Nations International Telecommunications Union. This is the UN agency focused on technology. They sent around a message to all of their members, and my university is a member of this UN agency, and basically did a call for anyone who'd be interested in working on digital gender equality. And of course, my eyes and ears perked up immediately, and I said, well, this looks like something very, very compelling for me to get involved in. And so I volunteered immediately. I said, yes, I would love to be part of this. Please include me in your network. And I think there was a short application form that I filled out, and they brought me on board. And I remember our first meeting face-to-face was at a university in Macau, China. And I remember sitting there in the midst of all these leading world experts and feeling so intimidated because I had just begun my journey in this field, and here these people had been working in it their entire lives. But I also felt honored, and I felt like I had a space now to work within this field. I had an opportunity to actually contribute to creating impact in this area. And that meant a lot to me, because otherwise it would have just continued to be me trying to be active in my classes and trying to bring gender into my research, but without really the kind of space that these sorts of research networks bring. It was around the same time that a group of 3 of my students, my former students actually, came to my office, and we sat down together and we were talking about this new network of research institutes that are focused on digital gender equality. And I said it would be nice if we could do something maybe grassroots focused here at my university. And so we got to brainstorming together, and we came up with the idea of creating a student organization focused on gender equality at our university, at my university. And so we really just laid a foundation right then and there. We took the space, this international network, as a trigger, as a starting off point for creating a locally grounded organization focused on issues related to gender and technology at my university. And it was extremely grassroots, since it was a student organization. And I was absolutely honored to be invited to sit on the board of that organization and contribute as a faculty member, as an academic staff member. That organization's still going on. So if I have any of my students who might be listening to this podcast, I would really encourage you guys, reach out to me, or reach out to someone else who is on the board of the organization Gender Equality and Technology at Oslo Met. So that organization really transitioned my local environment from something where it was kind of a nascent or not really organized chance for promoting gender equality and technology to organized and institutionalized opportunity. And that really gave us a kind of central focal point for continuing our work in advocating for women's equality in the tech industry. Now, another chance came up a few months later when I was sitting in my office and going through my emails at the beginning of the day, and, you know, like you usually do in these sorts of jobs. And I saw an email that came in from my vice dean, and she said, "Hey, Anthony, I noticed this call for proposals for EU projects focused on gender inclusive innovation. And so I said, wow, this is very, very opportune. We have this international network. We have a local grassroots organization. And now we have my university kind of as a touch point and as a go-between. So it was a critical opportunity there for me to take some of the different strands of work that I had been developing, my research in gender and my research in disability, some of my teaching and my advocacy in the classroom, the work that I'd been doing with the international network, the work that I was trying to do at a grassroots level with the student organization, and trying to bring all of those different strands together to focus in on creating a proposal for this EU call for projects in gender inclusive innovation. Now, going from an idea to action is an incredible, incredible journey that lasted a couple of years at the minimum. So it started, as most of these efforts start, with just a concept and a concept note to go along with it. And then it was all about mobilizing the different organizations that I had hoped would help contribute to this project. So I spent a lot of time not only crafting the text and the language that went into the proposal, but also recruiting members of our consortium and working together to try to identify where are the specific local needs when it comes to gender inclusive innovation, and how can we take those local needs and connect them across countries, across continents, and across the globe. And it was an amazing undertaking. I know it might sound very arduous, it might sound very challenging and difficult, but it was an absolute joy for me because it was a fulfillment of a kind of trajectory that had begun a couple of years prior. And so every time I reached out to a new partner, or every time a partner came to me and said, we should try to change the proposal in this way or this way, it was a chance for me to get closer, one step closer to that goal, and one step closer to kind of fulfilling that mission that I had kind of set out many, many years prior. Now, these sorts of stories always end up a little bit melodramatic at the end because all it comes down to is a click of a button, and then at some point afterwards, the receipt of an email that says, yay, you've been awarded the grant, or no, you have not been awarded the grant. So clicking that button was kind of the easiest part of that process, but it was also a very satisfying part because I had brought together over 19 institutions to participate directly in the project, and in a greater network of over 50 institutions who are all kind of coming together in order to challenge our expectations, in order to challenge the status quo, and to try to find ways of lifting up women and girls in different areas of innovation across the world. And I want to emphasize that the project, the idea behind the project, was never to create a kind of umbrella in order to find ways of facilitating action. The whole concept behind the project was anchored in grassroots mobilization and in elevating new voices in this area. And so the people who were working with me on this project, they were champions of these ideas and ideals. And so once we submitted it, it was kind of just with high hopes that we waited to get an answer from the EU to find out whether or not we would be awarded the grant. Well, a few months later, I got an email in my inbox from the European Commission, and it was very, very formal. And I had to read it like 4 or 5 times in order to actually understand what on earth were they trying to tell me. It wasn't just a straight up, yes, you've won, or no, you haven't. It was really hard to decipher from the language exactly what was happening. But what it turned out to be was that we were awarded that grant, and we were able to continue our work together. And this project is now well underway. You can check us out at equals-eu.org and learn all about the work that we're doing. Please follow us on social media because it's really exciting to see the project progress, and really it's an opportunity for you to take advantage of the knowledge and the wisdom and experience of our 19 partners who are coming together to advance these issues. So the takeaway is more or less this. Action definitely has to be a priority whenever we're trying to advocate for change. But in order to take action, you must have a basis from which you can operate. And I think this is what is often missing, or at least this was what was missing from my life when I was earlier in my career. I had the need and desire to take action, but I had no basis to take action from. And I think that basis can come in a variety of different forms. It can come in the terms of job security. It can come in terms of network building and things like that, relationship building. But you need that basis in order to feel comfortable and confident to take action. And so my call to action then is not to worry so much about finding that basis, but maybe take that first intentional, deliberate step and just speak up and speak out when you see injustice or when you see people being treated unfairly.